All right, how's it going? This is not gonna be easy to talk about because it is a concept that I've been meditating on for a few hours now that is extremely difficult to put into words. I know what I'm saying internally and I know what I'm expressing, but in terms of putting it into a somewhat logical frame, I'm gonna do my best and try, but perhaps consider it an epiphany or maybe just a thought. I don't know. It might be nothing, but I want to talk about it. And it's about time. And I've talked about time a lot before. And I'm noticing that epochs, let's just call them segments of time where there's kind of a sort of momentum going, an energetic wave pattern in those segments. Say you have a line and it's divided into these separate segments, and in those segments, there's different sort of patterns of consciousness that are developing and materializing in those segments. Um, and let's just call them miniature epochs. Like, you would see in school, you have, they would show you this was the era of the dinosaurs, and, this was this period when the extinction happened, blah, blah, blah. But, right, these are like incredibly prolonged periods, supposedly, right, over millions of years. I'm talking about like microscopic in comparison, things that last weeks, months, maybe. And what I'm trying to say is that there is a condensing taking place, a shortening of epochs of time, of segments of expressions of consciousness. So there is definitely an influence that is taking place um, over our collective consciousness. And I think that there are certain trigger events that take place that sort of feed this mechanism, and call it conditioning, call it programming, whatever it might be. But these sort of key events in these miniature epochs of time sort of thrust us along into different expressions of a collective consciousness within that epoch. So, for example, um, I think one of the most important events in the last 2 years was the death of Kobe Bryant, or the supposed death of Kobe Bryant. I think that event thrust us into a collective conscious mode um, that was completely different than the time before his death. And I really want you to meditate and think about this. Um, and it's again, this is so hard to explain, but it built up a faster momentum into something different after his death. And as you could see what happened, the chaos that ensued afterward. And what's going on with these epochs is that they're continuously shortening and tightening, and being condensed further and further into shorter and shorter segments, where you have, you know, an era that would last a couple of weeks at this point now. And there's definitely a connection to our, short attention span here as well, and things that are actually practical too. Um, and how easily we forget our past. But what I'm saying is that this process is a quickening that is sort of thrusting us into, I guess you would call it, the final grand epoch, before a sort of singularity, right? And let's just say, let's think of time as linear, even though it's not. Let's just think of it right now for our own brain's sake as something linear. Say that time is, like a tree, and you have branches, and you move along this tree, and you have branches off the tree that you can move into. And those are the timelines, and those are the choices that are made in those branches, but it's still one whole tree, right? And you move along and you make different choices and different things take place. But what I think is happening, and I don't know if it's related to CERN or if it's the arrival of the Dark Lord, if it's something biblical, if it's something spiritual, I don't know what it is. But instead of us as a collective moving along this tree and sort of making choices into different branches, it feels almost as if though those branches are coming towards us in our direction, and as they come towards us, they collapse, condense and collapse onto themselves until they are basically zeroed out, or what's that term? Canceled out. So the timelines are spiraling into these little miniature singularities and are breaking apart and canceling each other out. And they are moving towards us at a quickening pace. So I guess you could argue that it is a more fixed or set, staged set of events that we're kind of experiencing, instead of more of like the random element of natural creation that the universe is encompassed of. We are rather being kind of forced into these spirals, into a quickening. And as I've said in previous videos before, this quickening is very real. This is not a joke. If you were to tell me in 1997, yes, I was like 9 years old, that it's January, and then in a few days it's going to be November, I would call you insane. But that's exactly what this year felt like. This year felt like it was January, and maybe not a few days, that's a few weeks had passed, 6 weeks, and now it's November. And if we make it through to 2022 without iPad Go 2 or Third World War or any of these things, if we make it to that year and we make it through 2022, then 2022, it's exponential. So if 2021 felt like 6 weeks the entire year, 2022 is going to feel like 3 weeks or less. So it's going to quicken that much more, and those compressed future timelines are going to collapse faster and faster and faster. And it's happening so fast you don't even know what's happening. A week from now, there will be another miniature epoch of time. All right. I think sometime this week I will attempt to live stream and maybe call my friend Samir in London and have a conversation. I am really shitty with technology, really crappy with anything tech. So hopefully I can make it work. We'll see what happens.